Greetings all, Ben here from East West. Just going to take a look at some uranium stocks and just review the month it's been, being November, and see what we can see. So let's jump into it. So we're just going to start here with energy fuels, and this is the month of November. So we did have a slight down month, down 0.75%. So a pretty flat month. But the one thing I do note here is just looking at this trend, we've just got a little bit of a wedge sort of going in here, so we just have to keep our eye on that because the ranges are contracting a little bit. Now this of course is the start of December, so we'll ignore that for the moment because we're just going to concentrate on November. So yeah, slightly down there, and the volume's down a little bit. We can just see it's just starting to drop away a little bit there. Now just looking at the week that's been, you can see the wedge coming in here, and you know, obviously we had a pretty bad day on Wednesday. And the volume this week is exceeded last week, which isn't a surprise, of course, because last week was a holiday week. But we are just a little bit below. You know, this candle's not great to finish the week off. But we just got to look at these trends and just see how the market responds early into next week. So just looking at the volume profile for the month, this is the start of November here. We did finish the month just slightly above the point of control, but of course today, you know, being Friday, the first day of December, we've slipped back down. So it remains to be seen how we go moving forward with this. But you know, I think the trends are gonna give us our biggest clue. But certainly, you know, this area here around just shy of $8, this is just setting up as being a bit of resistance into the new month. So we'll have to wait and see if we can break back through this. But obviously, you know, the monthly low down here at 735 is of interest, and of course down here at $7.16 is the major point that we're looking at. So just looking at the volume points through the weeks that we've had in November, I've just started here on the 6th, and obviously this week was a bit shortened, but you know, we are starting to fail below this point of control here on the first week of November. We had some nice steps up, and then obviously because of this big candle we had on Wednesday, you know, this big down week that we've had, we are just below this point of control for now. So this remains quite critical, but the fact that we're below this sort of just opens up price to be a little bit lower. So just looking at the RSI, we started the week here at 62.77, and obviously because of this big downward candle that we had, we started off the week at 57.84, but we slipped down to 44.85 because of this, you know, this big downward candle that we had, and this is obviously a 14 period RSI. So as some of these other up days sort of drop out of the sample, you know, this big down day becomes very prevalent. Now this has driven us down to 44.85 to end the week, and the danger line within the RSI remains, this is on a daily, mind you, remains there at 40. So if we slip below here at 40, then I would suggest that some of these lows that we're looking at will be tested and possibly broken in the next week or two. Now, just skipping back out here to the weekly, and you can see here that the MACD and the signal line are getting very close to crossing. So that would be obviously a bearish signal. And you know, we know that energy fuels has been one that has been struggling. It hasn't taken out this late September high, which most of the other stocks have. So this remains a little bit suspect. And even out here on the ADX for the weekly, we've slipped from 36.93 down to 35.27, which just shows the trend is weakening. Now you can see here that the positive directional index and the negative directional index are beginning to come together. So this is starting to put out some signs that, you know, getting through this high in the next little while is looking less likely. We've got some pretty good telltale signs coming in here that the market's had enough. Even on the weekly RSI, we've dropped from 65.68 down to 55.34, and we know that this 40 remains the danger line. But you know, it's not classic divergence in terms of we haven't got that new high, but you know, you can see that the RSI is tailing away there. Now, in terms of the ranges for November, we did close here. This is the last day of November. We did close below the midpoint of the range, so that is not perfect in itself. And then this week we've actually closed in the bottom quartile of the week's range, so it was obviously quite a weak week, a down week, and we closed a little bit away from the weekly low, but it looks like that those November lows are going to be challenged shortly. Now, just looking at the trends in the near term, this remains probably the main point of call, this uptrend line that we've been tracking since mid-October. We don't have a lot of good confirmation on the top side. We've only got one touch there, but certainly, we've got this sort of higher low swing pattern going in. So we don't want to take this out because that's going to break the trend, which brings to the fore the possibility of a new bear trend forming. And so looking at this, we've got two touches here. That we've got a little bit of geometry off the bottom here. And we're just in the midpoint of what is potentially a new bear trend coming. So we've just got to be mindful, because if this low breaks, well, then what we've got is a break of structure. Okay, and that would lead me to think that, we're possibly headed lower. Now, in terms of the Elliott, there's connotations that maybe this is a three-wave corrective swing. But then certainly we don't want this to get broken, because if this breaks, then this whole thing as an impulse that hasn't completed breaks down. So whether or not we're looking at a completed impulse up to this point and now we're going for a deeper correction, only time will tell. But certainly we don't want to lose this low here. If we do, then that is not a good sign. So moving on over to Cameco now, and this was a better picture. We've obviously had a nice month. We're up 12.25% on the month of November, and that ain't bad. So that's been a good month. So just looking at the weekly here, this is the 7th week in a row that we've had a positive close in Cameco. So that is nice and strong. It can't go on forever. We'll have to correct at some point, but until we sort of get that. There is a bit of a daily sign there that we have to be a bit wary of, but so far, so good. We just stick with it. Now, there's a couple of warning signs that we've got to be wary of here. We're on a weekly here, but where this RSI is currently placed here, it's finished off here at 75.47. It's kind of double topped here, so that is still divergence, that we've got this higher high going in here, and then the RSI hasn't been able to make a higher high, but we are, in a word of warning, we are on a historically high point for the RSI, so we've got to be a bit wary of that. I know I've been banging on about that a lot, but the fact that the market's starting to run out of a bit of gas, and you can even see it, even though we've had a very strong month, the last 2 weeks of the month have been less strong, let's say it like that. And that's kind of reflected in the weekly ADX, where the trend is just starting to flatten out. We're just losing a bit of impetus up here, even though we're still a long way away from any sort of crossovers or anything like that. This is starting to warn you that the trend's getting tired. Just coming in here to the daily, and this candle is quite shooting star-like, so this warrants a little bit of attention, even though we did have this very good rip back here on Thursday where the market just went up. But this isn't the best way to finish off. I mean, it could just be a bit of profit taking, but certainly it's something to stay aware of. So we've got to be a bit mindful, because we did make a new weekly high above last week's high, which is great, but we have finished back within the prior week's range. So the range itself has skipped up, it has stepped up, but this needs to be, we need to fill in this imbalance here, because this is just a big sort of rejection candle as it sits. So in the RSI, we started the week here at 68.40. We've slipped to 62.63. So we're still a long way away from being in danger, but this is just a bit of local divergence now. You can just see it starting to creep in. Now, on the bigger picture, we've got to be mindful that this strength is starting to diminish between what looks like a wave 3 top and what's potentially coming in here as a wave 5. So this remains the broader trend channel that I've been tracking, and so far so good. But the only thing that just makes me a little bit wary is just the short-term trend, which is very fast. But just this little trend that we've had off this pivot where we've got a few touches, you can just neaten that up, a few touches, and we've sort of come on the other side of it. Now, what's a little bit disconcerting is, a lot of the time what you see with this trend is that we break it, we'll come back and retest the trend from the underside, which we've kind of done here. So I don't know if that means that we're now going to come down, but it's just a little bit of a warning. And when you combine it with the shooting star candle that we've got there, it just makes me a little bit hesitant next week. But, we know the overall market is incredibly strong at the moment. So, there could be enough to pull this out. But, I have been looking for some sort of correction in all the uranium stocks to unfold at some point. So whether or not we're going to get that next week, only time will tell. But I remain of the opinion that the run up is getting tired and it just needs a rest. It probably just needs a pullback so that longs can start to build again. A bit of structure comes in, and then we can go on for the next leg. So just looking at the volume profile for the month, and obviously it was a very strong month, and we've done most of our volume up here, up the top end of the range. Now we did finish the month in the top quartile. That's here. So yes, we did finish close to the high of the month, which is great. That's kind of what you want to see. Actually, I probably just need to extend that out So, you could just see here that these lows that we made here remain pretty key, just above $44, and just in the short term. But once again, I just caution because this candle that we finished on today looks a little bit suspect. We just have to be a bit wary of that. So in terms of the weeks as they unfolded through November, you can see here that we've stepped up pretty much, and just this week, that pretty heavy. So you can see why the monthly point of control was where it was, or is where it is. We've got a pretty good battle zone through here. So just initially early next week, this little point where the bulls and bears have been wrestling is going to be important. So, we've got this candle. If this can come in and then just sort of fill in this imbalance, then that would be a pretty good sign, and just hold here where the wrestle was on, because the bulls defeated the bears early, but the bears fought back. So that remains a point of interest. And then of course we have these lows that we don't want them to give way. Now, just in a final word of caution, if we do just apply a bit of Elliott channeling to this, I think this is 1-2 that I've got worked out. But what we would do is we'd connect 2 from off the bottom of what we think is 4, and then take a parallel off the top of 3, and then we would expect 5 to peak out at the top of that channel. And that is kind of what's happened. Okay, so that makes me a little bit wary when we just combine the way the RSI is looking, the shooting star candle. I've been looking for a top here, and I'm not saying that this is it, but there is a case to be made that we're diverging between the peak of 3 and the peak of 5. It is fitting the textbook definition of a top. In saying that, we've still got a pretty strong market generally, so that can be a good or bad thing, in so much as you just don't know if there's going to be speculative money flowing out of the uranium stocks and then chasing some of the other things that look like they're moving. Gold's sort of making all-time highs, Bitcoin's ramping up again. There's a lot of other options out there other than the uranium where people might be starting to think, well, I can take the money and run in this, and then I can jump into something else and try to extend my gains in a different vehicle. So we have to be wary of that. But it remains to be seen whether or not we're just going to get this sort of 3-wave correction that I've kind of been anticipating, but I've just been waiting for some sort of topping signal. This is a contender, but a lot of water needs to go under the bridge before we can start to think that there's a top in place here and that we're going to correct before we can push on further. So just moving over to UEC, and once again, we had a very strong month, up 9.58%. So another great month. And you can see here 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 months in a row where we finished positive in UEC. So that's great. Are we going to get another one here? Well, time will tell. We're only one day into the month, so we have to see what happens. But so far so good. We've even come in and just tested into the top of this big candle that we had here back in April 22. Now the weekly RSI is still pushing. We're at 79. We're just short of 80. So that's pretty good. It's not diverging. So that makes me think that there's probably more to come in UEC. But again, I just look back through history and just look at the ranges where the RSI is shied away from, and we're in it. So we've got to be a little bit mindful of that. But as things sit just where it is, I mean, this impulse, I'm not seeing anything that makes me think that is done. It looks to me like it's still got more to go. But of course, that'll be dictated to by the overall market itself. Now, even the ADX itself is continuing to accelerate. We're just sitting shy of 40, and the negative directional movement index is shying away. So there's a big gap here. There's nothing to make us think that the trend's running out. The ADX line is still advancing, which just means that the trend is getting stronger. Obviously, this point here is probably somewhere where we've got to just pay a little bit of attention, but so far so good. I mean, I'm not really seeing anything here that's a problem. It's a problem in the short term. So obviously last week we had the shortened holiday week, so we had a tighter range, but we've had an outside week even. I mean, you've got to take it with a grain of salt because of the week before, of course. But, we made a new weekly high and we finished above last week's high. So even though this candle's a little bit more like a spinning top, a little bit doji-like, a bit indecisive, this looks all right. So we finished up here in the top quartile of the range. So everything still looks pretty bullish here. And this was a very impressive candle after Wednesday's sell-off. I mean, that's a big run up. So, maybe a bit of bargain hunting. Well, we just had a little gap here that we came in and filled. Maybe not quite, but here, obviously, we did. So, the market's respected this area and moved away very strongly from it. I mean, Fridays are always a bit funny. There could just be a bit of profit taking. And like I said, people might be looking at rotating out of uranium into something else that's also moving. So we've got to take that into account. So when we just think about the month of November, I mean, we've had some pretty heavy business up the top here. But, the point of control, the main volume was through here. So that ties in nicely to these lows where we've sort of tested a fair few times. Now that, you could probably just tie it into this where resistance, even come back to here where resistance has been broken and become support. So that would just be, the short-term point of call there, just as we're looking at how price is progressing. So the good thing here with UEC through the preceding weeks is that each week the point of control has stepped higher and higher. So we finished right on this week's point of control up the top here. So whether or not there was some selling coming in here, who knows? But when we look at the volume itself, certainly this was an impressive candle with good volume above the 20-day moving average for the volume. So could there be a little bit of profit taking here and rotation? Yeah, possibly, but we'll just have to see how we respond in the next week. So the RSI, it actually finished the week a little bit higher than where it ended it. Actually, just double check that. Pardon me, it's actually just slipped ever so slightly. That might not be quite exact, but I think the point here is that it hasn't really made any progress. So, we can see all these tops here that we sort of broken. So let's just see what next week holds. This was pretty good and we busted through it, but the kind of bit of a rejection week there. So we'll just wait and see. I mean, if this sort of comes down here next week, then we kind of fatten this out into a broader range. But we don't know that until we see how the market acts next week. But this has been my favoured stock, and you can see even unlike Cameco, we're nowhere near the top of this trend channel. So I don't think there's any immediate danger here. Not so much as in the other two. This one, it's been favoured for me for a while. It just looks the cleanest and it looks the strongest to me. It's had a great run, I think, and even just the near term, we're just nowhere near breaking any sort of downtrend. I mean, we know we've just got a bit of consolidation going on here. We're going to have to be a little bit mindful of that. But this still looks the strongest to me. Technically, just the way it's set up, it does look like it's got more to run to me. I mean, I'm not going to try to Elliott this, but I'm still thinking that this looks like. Pardon me. Let's just clean this up a bit. This to me still looks like a 1, 2, a 3-wave, flat 4, and that we're going up to get 5. But I wouldn't have said that there's anything that's making me instantly alert that we've got a top going in. Not more in the other ones, but this might just follow suit. So, but so far it hasn't. It's just marched to the beat of its own drum. So let's just see what it does. But you can just see. We've got a little bit of consolidation going on here, so we just need to resolve this one way or the other. The fact that we sort of broke above it today, which is good, but it's not conclusive. You know, if we had a nice big Marubozu candle, and a Marubozu candle is, well, this is a Marubozu candle, where we basically open on the low and close on the high, and it's all body and no wick. So, you know, if we had had another one of those, it would have looked good, but we didn't. We've got more of a spinning top sort of doji style indecisive candle. But once again, that could just be linked to the overall market itself. So that is how we sit. So I think that's it for this week. I'm just going to cover those three. So yeah, I think the overall trends remain the same. I mean, the overall market is just absolutely rampaging at the moment. So that, I just think, you know, the general idea is that could drag some money away from uranium stocks in terms of just chasing gold miners, gold ETFs. You know, things like TLT are starting to pick up steam as bond prices start to really fall. You know, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of small caps starting to move, you know, and they could become much more attractive if they've been beaten down a lot more than a lot of other stocks. So if you're sitting there as an investor and you're looking at these uranium stocks and the run they've had, then you're sort of comparing them to other stocks that, you know, could possibly give you more return over the next week or month or so, well, then maybe these aren't as attractive, and that is just going to suck a bit of energy away from them. But that remains to be seen. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.